Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo, what up, Bolt fam? It's the director. Chargers fans, Victory Tuesday. How often you get to say that in a season? What a game. I'm actually recording this directly after the live stream, so my voice is still gone. We're still coming off the high of the victory. But either way, man, this game, I think, featured one of the best feel-good narratives we're going to see this season, featuring the Chargers kicker, Dustin Hopkins. Oh my goodness. If you guys didn't know, Dustin Hopkins, fighting a hamstring injury throughout that entire game, ends up being the player of the game, coming in clutch to provide the Chargers with enough field goals to overcome the Denver Broncos. And what some people would maybe say a sloppy division rival matchup, but nonetheless, the Chargers do improve to 4-2 and grab the victory over the Donkeys. Very nice game, or I should say very nice turnout and a nice narrative from Dustin Hopkins in this game that I would maybe call a defensive punch in the mouth, right? Defensive game through and true, as well as one that was promised to have a lot of heart attacks. It came in the Costco wholesale style with plenty of ups and downs and a roller coaster of emotions in this one. So it should be a good time. We're going to unpack what we saw and give our props to the Chargers we're doing, and maybe talk a little bit about where the team needs to improve, because we did see maybe a lot of issues that the Chargers fans, JC Jackson, might be a little concerned about going forward. But a win is a win, and we're going to ride the high of that as long as we can. Now, before we get into this and unpack a lot of what we saw, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action. The Chargers versus Broncos Week 6 post-game report. What a game this was, man. So crazy. So many narratives. In the end, the Chargers did get away with the win. Oh, man. I do apologize if I do seem like voice gone, still tired. Again, filming this right after the game. I had obligations to take care of on Monday morning, so we are here anyway. But I do wish I had more time to put together what we saw. Either way, it's the reaction. Kind of fun, right? Let's start with the statage breakdown of what we saw in this game, starting with the quarterbacks. The Chargers did a really decent job in shutting down Russell Wilson. I talked a lot about how I didn't want this to be the Russell Wilson redemption story game. We didn't want to see him go in there and start cooking. He's not been too good entire season. I didn't want the Chargers to fall victim to some kind of comeback game, and it turned out not to be the case. 188 yards and a touchdown. Not a worst day for Russell Wilson, but certainly not his best. Justin Herbert, you could say the same thing about, 238 yards and an interception. I think at this point, Justin Herbert scored in like 37 of 38 of his starts so far. This will be one of those few times that he was held scoreless through the air. Next up, let's talk about the rushing attack. Now, this is an aspect of the game I was hoping the Chargers would lean a little bit more into, but a development mid-game showed that JK, or aka Joshua Kelly, did exit with injury, and I think that's become a really important part of the Chargers rushing attack. They need to have that constant threat and presence on the field, of which at this point, I don't know if we can confidently say Sony Michel is that guy. As a matter of fact, next week, I think we're going to see our first action of Isaiah Spiller with Joshua Kelly still recovering from injury, and that may in the end up being a pretty good thing, because Sony Michel hasn't really had the best start to the season so far. Still 73 yards on the ground for the Chargers. Not too bad. Could have been better. I think it would have been better if Joshua Kelly was on the field. Under 100 yards for the Broncos is certainly not a bad thing to accomplish if you're this Chargers rushing defense. Definitely want to make sure that you don't go crazy like you did with the Cleveland Browns allowing over 200 yards. This was pretty respectable for what it was. Still, Latavius Murray, definitely kind of running back that we have to watch out for in the future, as that power back seems to be a bit of an issue for this Chargers defensive line. Finally, let's get into some of the receivers in this game. Jerry Jeudy and Craig Dulcich leading the pack there for the Denver Broncos. That Dulcich reception for a touchdown, man. Of course, you guys know how that one went down. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. As for the Chargers, it was really good to see Donald Parham back, 53 yards on 3 receptions. He did exit, I think, in the second half with some sort of injury. We'll keep you guys updated on that as we do learn more. Josh Palmer, as expected, led the Chargers in receptions, or I should say in yards, because I think he did have the better matchup in the slot. Definitely not too bad. And then Austin Eckler, 10 for 47. Fantasy owners around the world definitely very excited to see Austin Eckler continue his domination through here in 6 weeks. Finally, let's take a look at the defense here. I had predicted that the Bolts would log 5 sacks in this game. They fell 1 short, but still a very nice game for the Chargers defensively. I think, again, the narrative behind Week 6 versus the Broncos is going to be the defensive effort, and one that I think is going to be very good for the Chargers going forward. This team needed to find something on defense, even through the absence of a Joey Bosa, even through the disappointing, performances we've seen in J.C. Jackson, and they made it happen in Week 6 versus, again, the Broncos not being the best defense. But at the same time, I think the Chargers did learn a lot about themselves in terms of their defensive play and the stars they do have on the field right now. So big ups to Drew Tranquil, Derwin James with the 10 tackles. Kenneth Murray looked great. Khalil Mack, of course, looked great. Some nice defensive performances there for the Chargers. Last thing of note here, I wanted to get a number on the screen for you guys. The Chargers, 4 of 4 field goals by Dustin Hopkins. We're going to transition right into our first subject of the breakdown of the game. Dustin Hopkins is a friggin' warrior. Now, as I mentioned, guys, Dustin Hopkins in this game battling a serious hamstring injury. And I can't tell you if, hamstrings are the worst thing in the world, because I really haven't had a serious injury in that department. But from what I understand, it's extremely painful. As a matter of fact, I think after the game in some interview, he said that he had to go out there and perform despite knowing every time he swung his leg, it was going to feel like someone was stabbing him in the thigh with a knife. And that is something that I would like to call the warrior spirit, man. This dude went out there, knew the kind of physical exertion that he'd be put through, and still came in clutch for the Chargers. This is great, man. This is your time, Dustin. This is your moment. You earned it. This is one of the craziest performances I've ever seen by a kicker, given the circumstance, and it really left a lot of Chargers with that feel-good moment of, my God, look at this man push through, fight, and ultimately be one of the biggest reasons for this Chargers win. The Chargers offense certainly did struggle at times getting into field goal range, and when we were all, biting our nails wondering if Dustin could pull it off, he definitely proved himself 4 out of 4 times, resulting in the most points for the Chargers this week. So congratulations to Dustin Hopkins, man. We hope and pray that hammy is nice and recovered here in the next couple of weeks, but for now, dude, so, bask in the glory of that moment. It was certainly something to watch and very inspiring for Chargers fans. I got to tell you, I saw a lot of comments in the comments section saying they're going to buy their first kicker jersey ever. I think it's well warranted with what we saw on the field on Monday. Now, in talking about, some of the things that the Chargers could maybe improve on, though, I did want to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room and J.C. Jackson. Of course, that photo displaying what would be considered a busted coverage versus the rookie tight end, I do believe, and Greg Dulcich. Things got pretty bad, man. J.C. Jackson, of course, when he was picked up, there was a bit of talk about the potential of there being, some growing pains leaving the New England system and entering the Chargers system as far as the defensive scheme goes. Things have not worked out so far. And there's a couple of reasons that this could be the case. The biggest one that I think is that maybe that ankle procedure still hasn't fully healed. Again, we talk a lot about that closing speed. And the other one could definitely be fully grasping the scheme, and as well as maybe not being utilized to his strengths. J.C. Jackson, a very good press man corner when given the opportunity in New England. With the Chargers, things really haven't been working out that way. It feels like they're playing him in a lot of cover 3 and zone coverage, and he really just has not been able to properly defend his designated area. And in the couple of plays that we saw him really let the team down, it was pretty evident that there is something wrong at this point. And the reason that I bring up this topic at all is that I think it's okay to start talking about it, guys. What do you guys think in the comment section below? Do you think JC is really struggling in terms of the scheme? Do you think that the injury is holding him back? Or do you think this is one of those situations where a DB leaves New England and just can't find his footing in a new team, new system, a new setting? So that's really the worst case scenario that we're looking at right now. Now, if you were to ask me what my opinion was, like, director, was it a bust signing? We just signed that man, over $80 million. Is this, a bust move for the Chargers in the offseason? I still think it's kind of too early to tell. I think JC, of course, is probably the most, shocked a little bit at what's going on in this season. And I do think there's an opportunity to get in there and turn things around. But as of right now, the Chargers in the first half with so many busted plays in JC's direction, they had to make a difficult call. And that was to bench JC Jackson in favor of Vato Michael Davis to come in there and try and save the day. When it's really crazy is that when the Chargers did that, the second half of football on that defense, things got really, really nice for the Chargers. It really feels like that was one of the biggest things that they had to sit down, make that greedy decision and say, hey, man, he's having a tough day. Let's get, Michael Davis in there and see if we can get this Chargers defense some help. And from that moment on, the Chargers defense was playing so well that even in overtime, I was not sweating at all that we did not win the coin toss because I knew this defense had it in them to get the stops necessary in order to give the Chargers an opportunity to go out there and grab the win. So JC Jackson right now, very warranted in thinking that something is up. Maybe that takes a little bit of time to determine what's going on. Maybe some time for JC to get things straight. But as of right now, I think the Chargers defense looks a little bit better, maybe even a lot better with Michael Davis in as a starter in that lineup. We've got to give JC, I guess, some more time to sort things out. But you guys let me know in the comment section below. Are you a believer in JC's ability to turn it around, or are you more labeling this as a bust signing? It would be a huge gut punch if that ends up being the case. I'm not going to say it is. I'm going to lean more on the side that he'll sort it out. But one of the biggest Chargers free agency signings in a long time, and it's really sad not to see it, really come into effect early in the season so far. Speaking of cornerbacks, though, that definitely struggled here in Week 6 in this particular game, I did want to give a shout-out to my man, Demari Mathis. I'm sorry, I need to troll just a little bit. This was insane. Demari Mathis. Do they have a penalties thing here on the statage? We got to take a look in here. Is there a penalties thing here in terms of, how much they gave up? I don't think they do have it. Maybe team stats over here. There should be a penalties thing. Okay. Here he goes. Which side is this right here? The Broncos. 151 yards in penalties on Monday. And I bet you guys whatever, over 100 yards was Mathis alone. The dude had 4 pass interceptions. Is it fair to say that we should label this guy, in the Chargers column as far as stats, right under our own wide receivers? That's absolutely insane. That coach is going to have his butt after class in this one, man. I don't know what I would do in response of that. Demari Mathis, we can all feel a little bit bad about JC Jackson, but Demari Mathis, my goodness. It's been a while since I've seen, 3 pass interferences, 4, however. This is absolutely nuts. So, Mathis, thank you. DM27's in the chat to show our appreciation to Demari Mathis. I'm going to say this was a very tough-fought game, but that was a big aspect of it. Those penalty yards for the Chargers, absolutely nuts to see. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about our quarterback, Dustin Herbert. And again, not his best game. Still put up 238 yards. The interception was definitely a little bit sketchy, but he put up a pretty good fight despite that. What I did want to highlight, though, was something that we learned just before kickoff, and that was the Chargers starting center, Corey Linsley, not suiting up with this one. We later found out that it was food poisoning that sidelined him for this one. Somebody posted a response that absolutely made me laugh so hard. It was that ad for Russell Wilson and his Subway sandwich, and he's like, "This is a dangerous sandwich. You want to split it with me?" One of the most perfect responses I've ever seen. Either way, Corey Linsley not suiting up for this one. I think it's starting to become more and more evident how important Corey Linsley is to this offense. I think since he's been with this team, the Chargers, stat-wise, with your eyeballs, however you want to cut it, look so much better when Corey Linsley's on the field than when he's not. Because Corey Linsley's and his responsibility in terms of, protection, in terms of assignments, is just so large. And he's so good at it, too. He's so good at it that when he's not on the field, it feels like things kind of fall apart. And that's a big reason why Justin Herbert was having such a hard time on Monday. The pass rush was just getting in free, it seems, at times. Yes, free a lot of the times, too. Trey Pipkins was really struggling. Matt Filer was struggling. I think everybody on that line, for the most part, was struggling, except for maybe Jamari Sawyer, who was doing pretty well. Zion Johnson did pretty well as well, but he did, call 3 penalties. Other than that, though, this team really needs Corey Linsley on on this squad. And it did get me asking the question, how long do we have Corey Linsley on the team? How long does he have left to play? What's the age kind of thing looking like? It really started to make me think, no matter what, the Chargers need to find a way to keep a premium center on this team, because it's really evident that Justin Herbert, he's a great quarterback, maybe even without that center help, but with the center, he's a completely different guy, firing on all cylinders, really able to focus on the play in front of him instead of, having to multitask in terms of protection. And that's a really, really high value thing that Corey Linsley offers this team. Now, of course, food poisoning, he'll be back next week, no worries there. But at the same time, I want to have long-term plans at the center position. I would love it for it to be Corey Linsley as long as possible, but even past that, we need to have a guy that has the same or at least similar communication with that offensive line, because it seems to be very important to a quarterback like Justin Herbert. Now, speaking of Herbert on the offense, this was not their best day. Austin Eckler looked great for the most part. Mike Williams shut down by Pat Surtain quite a bit. Josh Palmer looked pretty good too. But for the most part, this team really did struggle in terms of getting the ball out quick. That pass rush really made things difficult for Justin Herbert to find the time to get his receivers open, to really, read the field. It certainly wasn't the best day in terms of that. And I think this kind of leads me to the subject of the offensive scheme a little bit. I think Joe Lombardi has been improving the past couple of weeks. This game certainly wasn't his game. I think a lot of it has to do with it being more of a defensive, game altogether. But at the same time, I want to have a plan. I want to have a trick in the bag of tricks, right? I want to have something ready for another situation like this, because we still have a long ways to go on this season. And this is not the last premium pass rush team that we're going to be facing. I want Joe Lombardi to have all his T's crossed and his I's checked when it comes to, facing something similar to this again. We need a better quick passing scheme. I love what we're doing with Justin Herbert in terms of trying to get guys open deep, push coverage back, trust guys like Austin Eckler and Mike Williams. But in situations like these, we need to have a plan ready to go and execute in terms of getting the ball out of Justin Herbert's hands quickly. Now, I think the Chargers are pretty good at trying to get somebody open underneath, that quick dink and dunk kind of game. But with stuff like this, I think it needs to be cleaned up just a little bit. So that's just my 2 cents. I think a better, offensive plan going forward versus a defense like this would help the Chargers not just, hope to, keep their playoff hopes alive down the road, but maybe even face those elite defenses if they do make it into the postseason. Next up, with the offense, I'm actually starting to really form a pretty strong opinion when it comes to the weapons on this team. We're going to get Keenan Allen back eventually, right? We can hope sooner than later, but again, hamstrings is so tricky. You can never really know when you're going to get a guy back, and hopefully Keenan Allen's just a game or two away from returning with the Chargers. And again, hamstrings, another reason why that Dustin Hopkins performance was so elite. Without Keenan Allen, though, this offense really does struggle to convert on third downs. Josh Palmer has slowly been showing signs of improving this season. I know a lot of us had high hopes for him in the offseason and in training camp and stuff like that in the preseason. But it's pretty evident that, Keenan Allen is pretty irreplaceable for this squad. And that just kind of opened up the question for me, like, okay, well, without Keenan Allen, things really kind of suck. What if we lose another receiver, knock on wood, like Mike Williams or Josh Palmer? What does that leave us with? We lost Jalen Guyton. The depth is starting to struggle just a little bit. Michael Bandy's great, but the Chargers don't seem to want to keep him on the official 53. So what's going on here? I think the Chargers would benefit greatly by going out there and signing another wide receiver. It doesn't have to be a guy as huge as Odell Beckham Jr. Of course, that would be a huge signing. But there's other, methods of going out there and getting a guy via trade, via free agency that would certainly help this team right now. Right now, we're going, into week 7. I think the trade deadline's in a couple of weeks here. This point of the season is where you really take a step back and you evaluate the strengths that you got so you can build on them and the weaknesses you got so you can help patch them up. If you really feel strong and you've got a good record at this point of the season, I think it's time to make a couple of moves. And I think for the Chargers, wide receiver would certainly be a good move for them right now, even if we get Keenan Allen back and Mike Williams is healthy throughout the rest of the season and Josh Palmer keeps, elevating a little bit. We not only need depth, but we do need a guy right now, and we also need an insurance policy. A guy like Odell Beckham Jr., sure, maybe a little bit over the top, but that would be a great signing at this point. But I am convinced that there's other, angles that the Chargers could take outside of OBJ that would be just as good. So I'm still going to, I've been floating around the idea for a while. After seeing this game in particular, though, you're going to face more teams that have shut down corners like Pat Surtain. Mike Williams was completely wiped off the board this game because, again, they were just able to focus on him. He needs help out there. The Chargers need players available to convert on third down and make big plays offensively. Right now, with the state of the wide receivers, I don't know how far we would make it into the postseason if we were to make it at all with the kind of, difficulties we're having finding people open. Maybe with a wide receiver signing, that sort of thing can change. The one thing I will say, though, no matter who the Chargers decide to sign, if they decide to pursue a wide receiver, this team desperately needs speed. I think speed would have made a huge difference in today's game. The Broncos defense, it kind of had an easy time in terms of keeping plays in front of them. A Charger, wide receiver with speed could be the difference maker in a situation like this going into the future. Next up, let's talk a little bit about, again, just a huge hat off and props to the defense, man. Big ups to the defense. This was a great performance by them. I would say more particularly in the second half. We talked about the first half, which I think for the most part they did really well. It really just was the struggles of J.C. Jackson that kept the Broncos' momentum moving forward. And once, again, unfortunately, when he was benched, the Chargers defense really did step up in the second half. The run defense was great. The pass rush was getting home. Khalil Mack, even Jerry Tillery. These guys were, throwing in helping hands. And, of course, the secondary was playing pretty nice as well. It really was a nice day in the second half, and it turned into one of those football games that maybe you expected it to be more of a defensive battle, but then seeing it in person, or I should say seeing it in live time, is a different story. These teams certainly tested each other's defenses in this one, and the Chargers defense, I can say, stepped up very, very big in the second half with a really nice performance, and ultimately one that helped the Chargers win the game. Also, a hats off to the special teams. Jasir Taylor. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. The dude with a million IQ play on the kickoff that ended up being muffed to win the game. Can you do that? If there's a guy standing too close to the guy, returning the punt, can you just chuck him into the returner and hope for a muff? I don't know. But we saw it, and it was fantastic, and a huge nice play by Jasir Taylor, and then cleaned up and recovered by Dean Leonard. The late-round cornerbacks came in clutch. Special teams, for the most part, looked really good this week, and those are boosts that you want to see at this point of the season. Special teams, maybe we're a little shaky on. They looked really good. Defense, maybe a little shaken on. Looked really good after JC was benched. I don't know, man. Some good signs there on the defense. Hats off to them. They put up a good show. And then next up, Drew Tranquil in the run defense. I wanted to highlight these guys specifically. Wow. Sebastian Joseph, Austin Johnson, those guys were fantastic in the second half. But Drew Tranquil, man, I think so far this season, this could be considered the Drew Tranquil game. As a matter of fact, Dustin Hopkins in that narrative definitely took over the show for good reason. But if that hadn't been the case, let's say Dustin's, hammy, there was no issues there. I think we would more consider this the Drew Tranquil game, man. This guy was electric. It didn't matter if he was a pass rusher, if he was in coverage, if he was defending the run. This guy was everywhere. And we'll continue to say it. One of our mods on the channel all the times, Hugo, he's always saying Drew Tranquil underrated, Drew Tranquil underrated. I think at this point, he's been kind of put on the map, especially in the AFC West. This guy is absolutely incredible. Big game for Drew Tranquil. And again, hats off to him. Hats off to the run defense, too. Things looked really, really nice, especially in that second half. So to help close out this video, I wanted to give you guys a sneak peek of what's going on in the AFC West as of right now with that win, and especially with that loss with the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. Take a look here at the AFC West. Right now, the Chargers and Kansas City Chiefs are tied for first place with records of 4-2. The tiebreaker, however, does go to the Kansas City Chiefs, who have won 2 division games. The Chargers as well has won 2 division games, but they've also lost 1 division game, and that particular loss came versus the Kansas City Chiefs. But the reason I do bring this up is that the Chargers, at this point, have closed the gap. The Chiefs are about to hit some pretty tough games here in the next couple of weeks. If they end up losing to a division rival, then yes, that would help the Chargers certainly overtake them in first place. But I think the narrative right now is leading up to the Chargers rematch. The Chargers' next few games, it starts to slowly ramp up in terms of difficulty, right? We've got the Seattle Seahawks, the Atlanta Falcons, the San Francisco 49ers, eventually making our way up to the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 11. I think the Chargers could be getting ready to put their fate in their own hands. If they can walk away with a few wins in those weeks and then try and take down the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 11, that could be just enough to overtake him in the division and ultimately maybe even take the division this season. But the Chargers got a lot of work to do until then. So my bottom line in this video that I want to say, it was a hard-fought day of football, especially on defense and special teams. Very interesting and very impressive to see how this team showed out. Super proud of everybody for, hanging in there and finding a way to win despite all the craziness that we saw in this one. Derwin James, hat off to him too. He had a couple really nice plays. And huge and big ups to Dustin Hopkins, man. I think, call me a softie if you want. Every once in a while, you follow narratives in the NFL in terms of heart and grit and just the spirit of the sport. And that was one of those moments that really made me feel good, man. Dustin Hopkins fighting through injury, fighting through pain, fighting through doubt, was able to push himself and put himself together to put himself in a spot to really help this team come out with the win. So huge hats off to number 6 out there. I hope to see a lot of 6s in the chat. Just one though, okay? I'm a bit superstitious. Don't put 3 in sequence. And huge props to him, man. And I'm very excited and very happy to be able to witness that, because despite the score, this game had a lot behind it, and it's going to be one that I don't soon forget. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. It's late. It's well after 1 a.m., but we're going to get this video out to you guys in the morning. Bask in the glory of the win. Victory Tuesday. The Chargers tied at 4-2 with the Kansas City Chiefs. Things are looking pretty good right now. Some stuff to sort out. We will be getting Joey Bosa back, Keenan Allen back here very, very soon, hopefully. And hopefully J.C. Jackson can sort things out and try to live up to the potential of what we were imagining he would be when signing him in free agency. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. We'll see you next time. Hit us up with a like and sub on your way if you did enjoy this content. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Dustin Hopkins, you are not just the warrior. You are a Spartan, my friend. Have yourself a day.